His stomach's getting a lot worse. It's rigid.
Wow, okay, this is horrid. I remember a case of bowel perforation when I was on general surgery and the patient was taken to theatre. Immediately, when we opened the abdomen, we found that he had appendicitis that had ruptured, that was caused by worms. House MD, Daddy's Boy, another episode recommended by you. Let's see if I can get the diagnosis before House does, while I give you my expertise as a doctor working in the UK. Season 2, Episode 5. Let's get started.
Hey, you don't do that, better cut it out! What the hell's going on?
Somebody call 911.
Okay, very interesting. This patient has dysesthesia, which is a type of neuropathic pain. It's caused by a disconnection between the brain and the peripheral receptors, and it can be caused by many different conditions. Most common is MS, but that is usually in women of Northern European descent, which this patient is neither, but House likes to throw a few curveballs at us, definitely doesn't follow what is common. It could also be diabetes, Guillain-Barré syndrome, Miller-Fisher, Lyme disease, HIV, or even shingles. Let's see what other clues we get to narrow it down.
Shocks. Excruciatingly painful shocks. ER docs referred him to a neurologist who referred him to 5 other doctors in the last 7 days.
Shocks could be Lermit sign, early symptom of MS.
No, MRI showed no white matter lesions and the shocks aren't accompanied by neck flexing.
Neurologist referred to 5 other doctors in only 7 days. This is definitely US based. In the UK, you'd be lucky if you're waiting in A&E for less than 7 days. It also seems like my MS theory is wrong because the MRI didn't show the white matter lesions. I would definitely want to do full sets of blood, including HIV screen, Borrelia burgdorferi, HbA1c to test for diabetes, nerve conduction studies, and EEG, as well as a lumbar puncture. Those junior doctors are going to have a long day with all these investigations.
Check the police report on what? On his mom's car accident.
That was 15 years ago. The kid wasn't even in the car.
She veered off a straight, dry road in broad daylight. It doesn't seem odd to you? Type 2 neurofibromatosis could cause the shock, the long arm of chromosome 22.
See, it's exceptionally unlikely that this patient has neurofibromatosis type 2. It usually causes bilateral acoustic neuromas, which cause hearing and balance deficiencies, which none are present in this patient. And you can get schwannomas as well as meningiomas, but you would easily see those on the MRI scan, and it was clear on this patient. So I can't see how this is the answer. Great investigating, but keep looking, team.
What's that smell? I'm gonna need a nurse. What the hell?
It's okay. We'll take care of it.
You didn't feel anything?
No.
Oh, we would be sending this man for an urgent MRI whole spine immediately. I wonder if this has been done already. Fecal incontinence plus loss of sensation, which we can call saddle anesthesia, are signs of cauda equina syndrome where the spinal cord is damaged. That being said, though, he still has sensation in his feet, which means that his disorder is probably a bit more localized than cauda equina. The easy things have been ruled out in this case, which is why it's been taken on by House. The way it's progressing also suggests to me that it could be infective of some sort. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, also known as mad cow disease, could potentially cause the symptoms. It causes demyelination of the nervous system and potentially similar symptoms with the timings also working as well. But it wouldn't be treatable, which makes it a little bit less likely. Neuroparasitic infection could also fit better if he was, especially if he was traveling, like schistosomiasis or cerebral malaria, African sleeping sickness. He hasn't necessarily been traveling, it seems, but he also could get some neuroparasitic infections locally. Like if he has a cat, he could end up with toxoplasmosis or toxocara canis if he was exposed to their feces. So that could lead to these symptoms. It seems like in this case, his dad lied to him about his mom having a car accident and told her it was because of her drink driving, even though it wasn't. So, you know, maybe if they're lying a lot in this family, that he would lie to his dad and he's actually traveled as well. I don't know. Maybe the shocks are due to parasites burrowing in his spinal cord. Ugh, that makes me shudder. Even though I've seen some disgusting things. Does it make you shudder as well? Parasites burrowing into someone's spinal cord? Burrowing? Ugh.
He lied to his son about how his mom died?
That's what parents do.
They lie to us because they love us. Who's getting teary?
Mom's death is irrelevant. DNA revealed no NF2 markers or any other inherited disease. Apparently, she really did fall asleep at the wheel.
Alright, so it's not NF2, which is what I thought. So why did the mom fall asleep at the wheel? Maybe she had HIV, developed cryptococcal meningitis and encephalitis as a result, and then had vertical transmission to her son, who basically didn't end up with immunosuppression until now, when he's become a binge drinker. That has activated the AIDS within his body, and now he is becoming susceptible to parasites which trash his nervous system. What do you think? Quite a theory.
Transverse myelitis. It caused numbness, anal sphincter dysfunction, and the shocks. We've ruled out cancer and MS. Leaves infection.
If there's infection, there'd be a fever.
And his blood and CSF cultures are all negative.
You get an immunoglobulin level in electrophoresis.
Okay, so Foreman thinks molecular mimicry is what has caused the patient's symptoms. Since his spinal tap was negative and he has no fever, that means infection is gone, but the immune response to the infection remains, which cross-reacts with the body's own cells, leading to an autoimmune response and transverse myelitis, which is inflammation of the spinal cord. This kind of reaction is also known as type 3 hypersensitivity. If this were the case, though, I would expect he loses sensation in his toes, which he still has them as far as we know, although it didn't seem like the most thorough neurological exam from what I could see. Electrophoresis would help them find these antibodies if they're there before they find their way further up this friendly graduate's central nervous system.
Are these people completely incapable of telling the truth to each other?
He went to Jamaica with his friends.
Even if he'd smoked, no way marijuana causes transverse myelitis.
True, but the stuff they put on it does.
Pesticides.
Starting on IV pralidoxine.
This is an outrageous diagnosis. Wow, if he's right, that would be totally crazy. But pesticides have organophosphates, which usually is fairly clear during poisoning because they overstimulate the parasympathetic nervous system by blocking the action of an enzyme called acetylcholine esterases. That means a signaling molecule, acetylcholine, builds up in the neural synapse, and that leads to constricted pupils, hypersalivation, bradycardia, none of which this patient has. Pesticides can be very toxic, though, and nerve agents are actually made from similar chemicals, which are also organophosphates, so you can understand the level of toxicity when it's used as a bioweapon. So pralidoxime blocks the action of organophosphates, basically releases the acetylcholine esterases so it can break up all of that acetylcholine from the synapses. Let's see if it works. I don't think it will. I'm still thinking it's a neuroparasitic infection, but what do I know?
He has the chills and his temperature's spiking. It's nearly 106.
What's that mean? I mean, what's happening?
You want the truth? Or you want me to make something up to protect you? We think a drunk driver broke into his room.
What's happening to my son?
The truth is, I have no idea.
Oh, okay, I like that House was honest here. But the fever and shivers are an even bigger clue that there is some kind of infection going on. A few times now they mentioned low white count and House has just dismissed it, which makes me think that it could be important. Depending on his neutrophil count, I would be starting antibiotics for neutropenic sepsis, potentially caused by HIV that he could have caught in Jamaica or from his mom, and whatever infection is making itself comfortable in our restless spinal cord has now spilled into his bloodstream. Cerebral malaria could do something similar to this. I bet they inspect his body, find a bite mark or something, and his urine starts changing color. That would be very interesting.
What's wrong?
His stomach's getting a lot worse. It's rigid. He's bleeding into his abdomen.
What's going on?
We need a surgeon in the OR stat.
On it.
Wow, okay, this is horrid. I remember a case of bowel perforation when I was on general surgery and the patient was taken to theatre. Immediately, when we opened the abdomen, we found that he had appendicitis that had ruptured, that was caused by worms. He needed a course of anti-helminth medication to get him recovered. With basically mebendazole. The pictures made me paranoid about eating meat though for a whole month.
The infection caused a perforation in his sigmoid colon. It's repairable.
But it means the antibiotics aren't working.
Double the dose and add Tigasil to the list.
As soon as he's out of surgery.
It's a bit peculiar that a general infection like this would just randomly cause a bowel perforation. I mean, it can cause ischemia through septic shock, and if he's got inflammation directly in the bowel itself. But if that were the case, then, I mean, why would they have not biopsied it already with a sigmoidoscopy? Just doesn't quite add up, to be honest.
Take off his pants.
Hey.
Don't talk to her, listen to me.
He's vomited in excess of 3 units of blood. He needs to be admitted before
If you wanted to be a doctor, maybe you should have buckled down a little more in high school.
bite me.
What are you doing?
Exactly how close were you and Carnell?
Not so close.
Oh, Rich Kid has a penile rash and Carnell has a bowel perforation. 2 + 2 equals your son is gay, sir. Interesting. Well, that would make HIV more likely, and sexually transmitted parasitic infections like Entamoeba histolytica and Giardiasis now on the cards. Giardia would be my bet though here, as Entamoeba histolytica usually has liver involvement. His LFTs would be way off. He would be turning yellow. He'd have right upper quadrant pain. Giardia could have been missed if they didn't test the stool for over-system parasites. So that's what they would need to do now to confirm it, but let's see.
It's not fungus.
I already told you that.
It's not pustules. It's not staph.
His dad's what?
His dad owns a scrap metal salvage yard. Kinda work that damn breaks.
What? Scrap metal salvage yard? Heavy metal poisoning goes way up the list now, like potentially lead, arsenic, mercury. This episode is a roller coaster of misdirection. Well done, authors. You keep throwing your curveballs at us, and they're playing diagnostic whack-a-mole.
I gave him an early graduation gift, the old plum I found. Looks like a fishing weight. Put it on a keychain so he always remember where he came from.
Get out of here. This thing is radioactive.
Whoa.
What? This dad gave a radioactive pendant he found in his scrapyard to his son. Oh, this reminds me of a story that was from Brazil. Basically, 4 trash collectors went to an abandoned hospital, found an old radiotherapy machine, which they didn't realize that that's what it was, took it to a scrapyard, and then started taking it apart and selling it piece by piece. Now, the owner of the scrapyard thought that this was quite interesting because when he opened the center, there was a piece of metal in it that was glowing in the dark, even though it was just a little powder. So he took it home to his wife and started giving out gifts to his friends because he thought that it was quite interesting. Now, this metal was radioactive cesium, and less than 20 grams of the metal ended up causing about 4 people to die within a month. They had such high exposure of this thing that they got symptoms within a week, and they think that the real count of people who died from this exposure, simply from this guy finding it in his scrapyard, was in the hundreds potentially. So official figures downplayed it. Absolute madness.
Do a PET scan. Check his cervical spine. It's not going to be good news.
The piece of metal that you gave Carnell was from an industrial device used to test wells. Well, people aren't supposed to just dump radioactive material.
But they do.
This is crazy. I love the accuracy of this episode. The fact that Carnell never wore the necklace means that he narrowly avoided fatal doses, and with time his radiation level should reduce. Although he's now contaminated, they should be isolating him. I don't know why he's not.
He's had much more exposure. The equivalent of about 70,000 chest x-rays. His ability to create white blood cells has been completely destroyed.
And that's why he can't fight off this infection.
He's gonna need a bone marrow transplant.
70,000 chest x-rays. What? Now, each chest x-ray is 0.015 MSV, which is millisievert. So that's the average amount of background radiation that each person gets over the course of a year. Now, 70,000 of that's about 1,000 millisieverts, which is exactly 1,000 years worth of radiation just from this tiny thing. And that's also the minimum amount of radiation that you need to actually get the symptoms that he has. So to have the acute nausea, to get a bone marrow suppression and the low white count. Gosh, that is serious attention to detail on this radiation poisoning dose level. Anyone who says House is not accurate needs to look at that. Really insane attention to detail from Universal Studios. I'm impressed. Well done.
We did another PET scan. There's a cavernous angioma within his spinal cord. It's a tumor. That's what's been causing the shocks and CNS symptoms.
He has a tumor inside of his spinal cord.
Well, not a neuroparasitic infection then. I'll just leave the room. I mean, can you blame me for not guessing that his dad found nuclear waste in his scrapyard, decided to give it to him as a necklace? Oh, that old chestnut. Yeah, page 25 of Guyton on Hall. Come on!
You know what your problem is, Craig?
Shifting gears?
You just don't know how lucky you are.
Oh, he was just trying to help.
I don't need help.
I know. You're absolutely perfect just the way you are.
Okay, so earlier in the episode, House didn't want to see his dad, and now I can kind of understand why. But let's just take a moment to appreciate his mom, though. Sometimes when you're feeling down, nothing can cheer you up like that warm, wholesome bit of reassurance that only a mother can offer you. Makes me feel a little upset though for like all the orphans who are out there that have never felt that love. You know, maybe we are actually luckier than we think, focusing on what we don't have rather than what we do. Appreciate your parents while you have them, people. That's one thing I've definitely learned from seeing thousands of dying parents. You never know when life can take your loved ones away from you. Don't let the last thing you ever said to them be something you regret for the rest of your life.
The reality is, no matter what we give him, it's unlikely he's going to be able to fight off the infections.
What? That is horrible! I thought they were going to come up with a bone marrow transplant or something, save his life, get his white cell count. Oh, is he actually going to die? That can't happen.
My dad's just like you.
not the caring till your eyes pop out apart. Insane moral compass that won't let you lie to anybody about anything. It's great quality for Boy Scouts and police witnesses. Crappy quality for a dad.
I don't know if I fully agree with that. Telling the truth in a malicious, wanting to hurt you kind of way obviously is wrong. But you can still be encouraging while telling the truth. Like if your 2-year-old is learning how to run, you can be impressed because they're 2. But you're not going to tell them they're the best runner in the world because they're not Usain Bolt. You can tell them you love them more than anything else in the world. That's true. Telling the truth doesn't always mean you need to be cutting like some people think. Do you really need to lie to be a good parent? I feel like that's what this episode is trying to tell us. It's the underlying theme and message. I don't know. We'll see.
I'm sorry I lied to you about Mom.
I'm sorry I lied to you too.
There was nothing good that came out of her dying.
It worked. I never drank and drive.
Is that okay to lie to your son to try and get them to do something good? We saw the effects of it. You will get found out and then lose the person's trust. How can they ever believe what you're saying after that? How can they trust anything that you say? I think it's categorically wrong to do that, even if it feels like it's for the greater good. Maybe I have an insane moral code like House is dad and I'm going to be a terrible parent too. Food for thought. Although if House was my child, I would probably be pretty happy, although I would want him to be happy as well.
There's nothing to be scared of. You're gonna be just fine.
Don't play me. I want to know the truth.
I'm telling you the truth. You're gonna be fine.
See, this kid knows that his dad is lying to him. How can it end like this? I am not a happy man. His son is dying and the last words that are coming out of his dad's mouth are a lie. At least they've made peace with the lies about his mother and had a moment of true genuineness for a second. What do you think? Should he be telling the truth and telling his son that he's dying, or do the compassionate thing and lie to him even though his son knows? I would still be leaning towards telling the truth. I would say something like, son, you are going, but I'm so eternally grateful for the time that we've had together. Or a simple I love you would do.
I love you, Dad.
I love you too.
Oh man, no father should ever have to see their son die. Can you imagine if that is the way you killed your son, by gifting them a radioactive metal necklace as a graduation present? Jeez, this is heavy. Well, you're gonna need an episode with a happy ending after this one, so go watch it here. Stay curious, but if you find a device in an abandoned hospital, don't sell it for scrap parts.